Look around you. Chances are, you're reading this on a device, perhaps in a home you own or rent, wearing clothes you bought, having eaten food you purchased. Every single one of these actions, these fundamental parts of modern life, revolves around one invisible, yet omnipresent, force. It's the lubricant of our economies, the scorekeeper of our value, and the very foundation of how we interact and thrive. We're talking, of course, about money. But what is money, really? Is it the glint of gold, the rustle of paper, the plastic rectangle in your wallet, or the pixels on your screen? Its form has changed dramatically over millennia, but its purpose has remained remarkably constant. It's a story of human ingenuity, of trust, of shared agreement, and of an unyielding quest for efficiency. Join us, as we embark on an epic journey, tracing the remarkable evolution of money, from the cumbersome days of swapping goods directly, to the shimmering, decentralized promise of digital currencies. Prepare to understand the hidden mechanisms that power our world, and to see money not just as something you spend, but as one of humanity's greatest inventions. Imagine a world without money. A truly primitive society where every individual, every family, was entirely self-sufficient. They hunted, gathered, made their own tools, built their own shelter. But even in the simplest communities, specialization began to emerge. One person was particularly good at crafting sharp flint tools. Another had a knack for finding the best berries. Yet another was a skilled hunter. Barter is beautifully simple in concept, direct trade of goods or services for other goods or services. I have apples, you have a wooden bowl. I need a bowl, you want apples. We trade. Simple, right? But this seemingly straightforward system quickly ran into a significant problem, what economists call the double coincidence of wants. Let's say our apple farmer needs a new pair of shoes. She finds a shoemaker. Great. But what if the shoemaker doesn't want apples? What if he only wants bread? Now our apple farmer has to find someone who has bread and wants apples, then convince that person to trade their bread for her apples, so she can then take the bread to the shoemaker and trade it for shoes. Exhausting, isn't it? Barter was clunky, inefficient, and profoundly limited. How do you divide a cow if you only need a handful of berries? How do you transport a ton of grain to trade for a single tool? How do you even agree on the value of an intricately woven blanket versus a basket of fish? The perishable nature of many goods, the difficulty of transport, and the sheer challenge of finding someone who had what you wanted and wanted what you had, made large-scale trade, or even complex transactions, virtually impossible. Humanity needed something better. Something that could act as a universal stand-in, a common denominator. The rise of commodity money, value you can hold. The solution began to emerge with the concept of commodity money. These were items that people valued for their intrinsic worth, but which also began to be accepted as a medium of exchange. They weren't just useful in themselves, they were useful because others would accept them in trade. What made a good candidate for commodity money? It needed to be durable ****, it wouldn't rot or fall apart quickly. Portable ****, easy to carry around. Divisible ****, you could break it into smaller units without losing value. Scarce ****, not so abundant that everyone had it, but not so rare that nobody could get it. Recognizable ****, everyone had to agree on what it was and its general worth. Across different cultures and continents, a fascinating array of items stepped into this role. In ancient Rome, soldiers were sometimes paid in salt, giving us the root of the word salary, salarium. In many parts of Africa, Asia, and Oceania, beautiful and durable cowrie shells became a widely accepted form of currency. In some societies, livestock, cows, sheep, represented significant wealth and could be traded for land or other major assets. Other examples included grain, spices, obsidian, even large stone wheels on the island of Yap. These commodity monies offered a monumental leap forward from barter. Now, our apple farmer didn't need to find a shoemaker who wanted apples. She could sell her apples for a standardized unit of commodity money, say, a handful of cowrie shells. Then, she could take those cowrie shells and buy shoes from the shoemaker, who would accept them knowing he could use them to buy bread, or whatever he desired. The double coincidence of wants was largely circumvented. But even with commodity money, challenges remained. Imagine carrying enough salt to buy a house, or enough grain to purchase a new boat. Many commodity monies were still heavy, perishable, or varied widely in quality. A large, healthy cow was obviously more valuable than a scrawny one, leading to constant disputes about value. Humanity was getting closer, but it still hadn't found the perfect medium. The lure of metals, standardizing value. As civilizations grew more sophisticated, so did their need for a more refined form of money. And they found it in the earth itself, precious metals. Gold, silver, and copper possessed almost all the ideal characteristics for money in a way no previous commodity had. They were durable ***, they didn't rust, rot, or degrade easily. Portable ***, high value-to-weight ratio, a small amount could represent significant wealth. Divisible ***, could be melted down and recast into smaller or larger units. Scarce ***, naturally limited in supply, ensuring their value. Recognizable ***, their unique luster and properties made them easy to identify. And critically, they had a widely accepted intrinsic value, they were beautiful, useful for ornamentation, and relatively rare. Initially, precious metals were used as money in crude forms, lumps, ingots, rings, or spirals of varying weight and purity. To complete a transaction, these pieces would be weighed on scales and often tested for their metallic content, which was time-consuming and prone to fraud. Imagine the haggling, the suspicion. Then, a revolutionary invention changed everything, truly ushering in the modern era of money, coinage. The Lydians, an ancient kingdom in modern-day Turkey, are widely credited with minting the world's first true coins around the 7th century BCE. These early coins were made of electrum, a natural alloy of gold and silver, and bore the imprint of a lion. The genius of coinage was simple, a standardized weight and purity, guaranteed by an issuing authority, usually a kingdom or empire, through a distinctive stamp or effigy. No more weighing, no more purity tests in every transaction. You could simply count the coins. This drastically sped up trade, reduced disputes, and enabled unprecedented economic growth. Empires flourished as their standardized currency facilitated commerce across vast territories. Think of the Roman denarius, the Greek drachma. These weren't just coins, they were symbols of power, stability, and trust. But even coins had their limits. As economies grew, and transactions became larger and more frequent, carrying vast amounts of heavy metal coins became impractical, dangerous, and cumbersome. Another evolution was on the horizon. From coins to paper, trust and fiat. The stage was set for the next leap, paper money. The story begins not in a government treasury, but often in the secure vaults of goldsmiths. Wealthy merchants, fearful of theft or fire, would deposit their gold and silver coins with these trusted craftsmen for safekeeping. In return, the goldsmith would issue a signed receipt, stating how much metal had been deposited. Initially, a merchant would reclaim their gold to make a purchase. But soon, people realized that these receipts themselves could be used as payment. Why drag heavy gold out of the vault, only for the recipient to deposit it straight back in? If the goldsmith was trustworthy, their receipt was as good as the gold itself. These receipts, transferable from person to person, became the very first prototypes of banknotes, marking the dawn of the modern banking system. While Europe was still figuring this out, China, ever the innovator, was far ahead. As early as the Tang dynasty, 7th century CE, and certainly by the Song dynasty, 11th century CE, merchants began using what they called flying money, or jiaozi. This wasn't just a goldsmith's receipt, it was genuine government-issued paper money. Merchants depositing large amounts of coins in the capital would receive promissory notes that could be redeemed in distant provinces. It was lighter, safer, and spurred incredible economic expansion. Marco Polo, visiting China centuries later, was utterly astonished by the Great Khan's command that his subjects accept papers stamped with the Great Khan's seal instead of gold or silver. It took several more centuries for paper money to catch on widely in the West. The Bank of England began issuing banknotes in the late 17th century. Initially, these were representative money, each note represented a specific amount of gold or silver held in the bank's vaults. You could, theoretically, always walk into the bank and exchange your paper note for its equivalent in precious metal. This system, known as the gold standard, provided a tangible anchor for the value of paper money. However, the gold standard had its limitations. It constrained a government's ability to increase the money supply, which could be problematic during economic crises or wars. It also tied the global economy to the often unpredictable supply of gold. Gradually, throughout the 20th century, countries began to decouple their currencies from gold. The decisive moment for many was in 1971, when U.S. President Richard Nixon ended the convertibility of the U.S. dollar to gold, effectively dismantling the last vestiges of the Bretton Woods system. This ushered in the era of fiat money. Fiat is Latin for "let it be done." Fiat money is currency that is not backed by a physical commodity like gold or silver, but by the decree of a government. Its value comes from the collective trust we place in that government, its central bank, and the strength of its economy. Its Liga. The digital revolution, plastic and pixels. The late 20th century brought another seismic shift in how we interact with money. The physical exchange of cash or checks began to give way to the invisible dance of electronic signals. The advent of computers and telecommunications paved the way for electronic money. The first major player in this new frontier was the credit card. Introduced in various forms since the 1950s, credit cards, and later debit cards, transformed transactions. They weren't money themselves, but rather a promise to pay, credit, or direct access to funds held electronically in your bank account, debit. Suddenly, you could buy goods and services without needing physical cash, globally, almost instantly. This convenience fueled an explosion in consumer spending and facilitated a truly globalized economy. But the digital revolution didn't stop at plastic. The Internet brought about online banking and electronic funds transfers, EFTs. Now, you could move vast sums of money from one account to another, across continents, with a few clicks. Services like PayPal emerged, making peer-to-peer digital payments accessible to anyone with an email address. Then came mobile payment apps, Venmo, Apple Pay, Google Pay, turning our smartphones into virtual wallets. Money, in many ways, had become pure information. It existed as entries in ledgers, digital bits of data flying across networks. The physical constraints of barter, the weight of commodity money, the risks of carrying coins, even the bulk of paper notes, all seemed to vanish into thin air. We were trading in promises, backed by vast, complex digital infrastructures and the continued trust in our financial institutions. But what happens when that trust is shaken? Or when the very idea of a central authority controlling money begins to feel outdated? The frontier, cryptocurrencies and beyond. The 2008 global financial crisis exposed deep vulnerabilities in the traditional banking system and eroded public trust in central authorities. It was against this backdrop that a mysterious entity, or group of entities, known as Satoshi Nakamoto, released a white paper proposing a radical new form of money, Bitcoin. Bitcoin was envisioned as a peer-to-peer electronic cash system, revolutionary in its defiance of centralized control. It wasn't issued by a government or a bank. Its value wasn't determined by a central authority. Instead, it was secured by cryptography and maintained by a distributed network of computers, a technology called the blockchain. The blockchain is essentially a public, immutable ledger of all transactions, maintained by thousands of independent participants. This decentralization means no single entity can manipulate the currency, reverse transactions, or unilaterally print more of it. Bitcoin, unlike fiat money, has a finite supply, mimicking the scarcity of precious metals. It's not just money, it's a new philosophy for money, built on transparency, mathematical proof, and disintermediation. Since Bitcoin's inception in 2009, thousands of other cryptocurrencies, known as altcoins, have emerged, each with unique features and purposes. Ethereum, for example, introduced smart contracts, allowing for more complex applications beyond simple payments. This burgeoning crypto ecosystem represents the Wild West of finance, a frontier brimming with innovation, speculation, and intense debate. The rise of cryptocurrencies has even prompted central banks around the world to explore their own digital currencies, known as central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. These would be fiat money, but in a natively digital form, potentially offering the efficiency of crypto without the volatility or decentralization. We stand at a pivotal moment in the history of money. Will cryptocurrencies truly usher in a new decentralized financial era, challenging the very notion of state-controlled money? Or will they remain niche assets, perhaps eventually absorbed and regulated by traditional systems? The answers are still being written, block by block, transaction by transaction. The enduring quest for trust and efficiency. We've journeyed through millennia, from the frustrating limits of bartering apples for bowls, to the shimmering digital frontier of Bitcoin. What a ride it's been! But beneath all the changing forms, the shells, the salt, the gold, the paper, the pixels, lies a consistent human truth. Money, at its core, is a remarkable tool. It's a technology that facilitates trust, simplifies exchange, and allows us to store value over time. It's a shared story we all agree to believe in, a collective illusion without which our complex societies simply could not function. Whether it's backed by intrinsic value, government decree, or cryptographic proof, its utility ultimately rests on our collective acceptance and faith. The history of money is a testament to humanity's relentless pursuit of efficiency, security, and convenience in our economic interactions. Each innovation, from the first standardized coin to the latest blockchain, sought to solve a problem, to make trade smoother, faster, and more trustworthy. So, what's next? Will physical cash become obsolete? Will a global digital currency emerge? Will the dream of a truly decentralized financial system materialize? The only certainty is that money will continue to evolve, shaped by our ever-changing needs, technologies, and societal structures. The next chapter in the history of money is always being written, and perhaps, in some small way, you are already helping to write it. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey.